exactly. So that kind of pulls us into episode 3, right? And for me, this one was it's like kind of like a transition episode, right? And it's kind of like I guess weird how much story that they wanted to cover and kind of I don't know. This was one that was kind of like a little bit odd to me, not necessarily like in a bad way. It was just kind of interesting, like kind of how everything transpires with the story. It kind of transitions from one area to where the main story or where the rest of the story is going to kind of take place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Wendy kind of chases after Joe, right, who's been captured by that xenomorph, and sees that he's kind of being cocooned, cocoonized. I don't remember. I'm sure there's an actual
You could just say cocooned. I mean,
cocoon. Okay, he's in the middle of that happening, which, like I said, I think that's the only time in the show we actually see like a live person being cocooned by like the xenomorph or however they do that process.
yeah, but it's something we haven't seen before, though. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not anything new. It's just very interesting that that's the one time that we see it is in this moment, right? Where he's being cocooned. So Wendy, kind of like locates him. And we see that the xenomorph was nearby. Now the xenomorph ends up kind of injuring Joe there, but then Wendy, she has like this little meat hook thing, and she like kind of captures it with the little. I'm sure that there's a term for right. It's the little like mouth. It's the little tongue thing that comes out, right? That's got the little the little yapping alias. So she kind of like hooks it right on that tongue, right? Super painful, I'd imagine, right? So she drags the xenomorph right on the hook, and they see that there's this like kind of like really heavy door, that's in a room. So Wendy's like, hey, I'm gonna take the xenomorph over there. We'll throw it into the room, and then we can close the door behind it, and we capture the xenomorph, right? So
I thought they were trying to decapitate it because. Because I assumed that they were going to use the door as like a way to like come down and cut its head off.
I guess they could have done that too. That's right. I thought about it more like they were just going to kind of throw it in there because a part of what they're trying to do is capture stuff. So that's where my brain was. But I know Wendy kind of is more focused on saving her brother. So
that's where I was going with
not
that.
Really a concern for her. So I mean, hey, either way works, right? So. Really that whole plan goes kaput, right? Because as the door is getting closed, the xenomorph kind of I guess breaks through, right? Or it kind of like the little meat hook kind of pulls all the way through the tongue, and it brings Wendy into this closed area with them. So then Joe kind of has to act very frantically to open the door. And when he goes in there, he sees that the alien now has no face, and we see that Wendy has taken some damage. And I have to admit, right? This was, I think, an opportunity to see your main character, right, Wendy, kind of fighting, and it all kind of happens off screen. And I wasn't a huge fan of that. Did you think that was kind of cheap of them to go about it like that, or what do you think?
Yeah,
because that did kind of really bother. It bothered me probably a little bit more than it should have, but it was just really weird that they decided to do that.
I mean, I wasn't entirely bothered, but I kind of wish, maybe we could have seen like a few more scenes of her actually taking it down, because obviously she demonstrates that in her new body she's got enhanced strength, right? So so she can obviously go toe to toe with the xenomorph, and plus she does have that paper cutter thing on her back. So I'm like how exactly did she use it? Like, was she like using it to like slice frantically, or did she like calculate the exact spot she needed to cut in order to incapacitate the thing? But I was a bit upset, but I wasn't too upset, if that makes sense.
She kind of just made me think about did you ever see Alita Battle Angel?
No.
Okay, so it's like it's a manga that had a live action.
I know about the live action. Yeah,
the live action, right? And she is a she's an android, right? And she carries around a sword. So it kind of just made me kind of think about that. An android with a sword, very similar to her. So that's what kind of made me think about it. But yeah, I just, would have been cool to, I think, see, that prowess, right? Because, they focus a lot on like, hey, this is the future and everything like that. It would be nice to see how that future works, right? Like, let's see her kicking some ass to really kind of reflect that. So, but whatever is what it is, right? So, she's incapacitated. Joe, he had his lung punctured, so he's not doing good. He starts coughing up blood. So they kind of both pass out together next to the dead alien body. So kind of a cute moment with them being together. So we get a cutaway, right? So we see Morrow, right? So he confronts two of our lost boys. So this is where we see Smee, right, and Slightly, who's there, and they're kind of, I guess they're just kind of guarding, right, the eggs at this stage. So we see Morrow kind of like questioning, who they are, what they're about. Obviously, he comes to the realization like, hey, these are like kids. This is really weird. So he's having like a conversation to try to understand more about who they are, what their objectives are. But luckily for the two hybrids, right? This is where Kirsch shows up, and he kind of brings a very abrupt end to the conversation, right? And I did really like this scene, right? Because Kirsch is like absorbed all the information as far as what's been going on or what the alien creatures are. So I like how he kind of shows up and he starts talking about the alien eggs. And because Morrow is a cyborg, or he's not, he's still part human, the alien creature reacts to him. So I do like how in this whole thing, like you have the synthetic bodies on one side, and then you have the cyborg on the other. Cyborg knows he can't stay there for very long because he knows what happens when that face hugger is going to come out of there. They kind of don't have an opportunity to do it, but you do see that Morrow, he kind of puts this, like, you see him kind of put this like little object on Slightly, right? It's very, very brief. But you do see him kind of put this like little thing on the neck, which we'll find out later what that's for. But Morrow ends up having to flee the scene, not to, get face hugged. This is where the Prodigy team, right? They end up going back to Neverland Island, right? So they bring the 5 alien creatures with them. All the Lost Boys go back along with an injured Wendy and an injured Joe, right? And this is why I kind of consider this like kind of an odd transition episode, because it's like we spend like half of it still in New Siam, and then we spend the other half of it just them kind of setting everything up at Neverland Island, which is where the rest of the story really takes place. So the creatures, right? They get brought down to a research room that's there, and we see Boy Cavalier there, and he is kind of expecting the xenomorph egg, right? And you start to see it kind of react to everything, I guess fortunately for him, right, Kirsch kind of takes him out of the room and, kind of explains like, hey, any type of, human, I guess any type of human that's in here is going to be in danger with all this stuff. So he kind of exposes that. But I did want to take a second, right? Kirsch, right, who's played by Timothy Oliphant in this, right? I absolutely loved his character. I think that he was absolutely the highlight of the show for me, because the whole time he has this like really disconnected feel, and it kind of gave me like, it kind of made me think a little bit about like Ash from the first one, right, where he was like the science officer and his sole focus was on science, right? So you kind of see him, you never really know what he's willing to have happen or not, because he kind of pulls a lot of strings throughout this. So I did want to call this out. I really liked Kirsch in this. I think he was my favorite character. And Timothy Oliphant did a superb job with this performance. So did you have any thoughts about Kirsch? I want to give you an opportunity to talk about Kirsch if you want to talk about Kirsch.
I mean, he definitely was channeling Lance Hendrickson, in that portrayal,
Yes.
Now, obviously, since they're supposed to be unemotional and very intellectual, but Timothy Oliphant, he definitely puts his own unique take on it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it was just such a cool thing because it's the character motivations are so you're not sure about what to expect. And I think that he plays this really significant wild card for me, at least with the story, because I just never know what he's thinking about or what he wants to do. So I really liked him. I think he did great. So kudos to Kirsch, and that will not be the first time I talk about him and how much I enjoy him. So just know Kirsch was definitely my favorite as far as the characters go. So now that we have kind of what's going on there. So Curly, another one of the Lost Boys, she meets up with Boy Cavalier, and she has this obsession with being the favorite, right? Like she doesn't like Wendy, and she feels like she wants to be the favorite. She wants to be the apple of Boy Cavalier's eye. And he kind of says hey, maybe you could become my favorite later on, but he definitely kind of is clearly not, I guess, too interested in her, or not as interested as he is in Wendy.
I mean, he's stringing her along, basically.
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly the way to put it. So, so this is where we kind of talk a little about Curly, Morrow, right? So, we learn a little bit more about what happened with him. So he placed that device on Slightly that we talked about, and what that was it allows him now to communicate directly with Slightly at the Neverland Island. So that happens with them, and they're having these conversations. Conversations, I will say, that Kirsch knows about and reviews, and he seems to be the only one that's aware of it. So kind of, once again, makes Kirsch this interesting. And then Nib, she pokes her eye. And that's all I wrote, and I want you to make sure that when we're doing the editing for this, I want to show her poking her eye, because I just want to call that out. She pokes her eye. But this is where, now that we're on the island and we focus a lot more on Wendy and the Lost Boys, I wanted to talk about this at this stage because to me, the characterization for most of these people was really obnoxious. I just was not too much of a fan of these characters. Because really it never felt like many of them developed or had any type of arcs, right? So we have, Curly, right? Her trait is she doesn't like Wendy and she wants to be the favorite, right? It's super obnoxious. It happens. You have Toodles, right? Who ends up kind of being the Kirsch's kind of backup or whatever. So
he's the brown noser, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Right, he's the brown noser. You have Slightly, who, like I said, is totally moronic in this, right? And he's probably my least favorite of these characters, which is saying a lot. But Slightly is just really obnoxious, right? Because you have this guy, right? This guy that threatened your life, and he's communicating with you, right? And it's you don't bring it up to anybody that this is happening, right? Because really, the events of this probably don't happen the way it does if Slightly is not there, having this conversation with Morrow, right?
I mean, also too. I mean, when he reveals that Wendy is Joe's sister, I was like, dude, you cannot keep a secret. What good are you?
I know, right? Yep. And here's the thing, right? And I can appreciate that from a certain aspect because I know that they're kids, right? With that being said, the issue is that kids are dumb. And they're gonna do stupid, dumb kid shit, right? And from an audience perspective, or at least from my perspective, I always speak for everybody, right? But if I'm gonna talk about myself, right, I don't want to watch dumb kids doing dumb kid shit, right? It is just obnoxious to me because to me, it's not engaging storytelling, right? You can have kids be kids in certain situations, but you do need to have them have some type of iota of brain power to kind of propel the story along without it feeling like the story is super weak.
Well, it's kind of like in that movie Big, where where this kid's trying to figure out, how do I navigate, in an adult body and being, thrust into adult situations. I mean, these characters are kind of annoying, but at the same time, you kind of have to remember, and they even mentioned it too. They said basically they're, they specifically chose to put these kids in adult bodies because synthetic bodies don't grow. So they kind of, so at least materially they have to appear as as their final form as adults.
Yes.
But then
yes,
obviously the minds, they still have time to grow and learn and process things.
Yeah.
So if you think about it,
it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like the way that you outline these characters, I mean, they're just reflecting different aspects of what children think about. Am I the favorite, or can I hold on to a secret, or what can I do to make this person like me, right?
Yeah.
So at the same time, you kind of have to keep in mind that kids do dumb things, but they do these dumb things as a way to learn. And I think another reason why Boy Cavalier kind of gravitates towards Wendy, besides her being the first, is because out of all of them, she kind of matures the quickest.
Very true. Yep. And like I said, I 100% agree with you. There is no doubt, right? You have to look at it from the mindset that they're kids. I just feel like that always ends up backfiring because kids are kids, right? And when you're trying to do I think mature story where you're talking about like, hey, what is it to be a human being, right? And you're going into like really deep things, having your mouthpiece be, a little child, albeit in an adult body, doesn't always maybe mess with the message, right? Or at least it was for me. So, but kind of this episode wraps up. So Wendy has now recovered from the wounds that she, had from the crash site and from the xenomorph. And she's hearing this sound, right? And now this is a sound, right, that she heard at the crash site as well, right? So she's been hearing kind of this noise, but it's a lot more prevalent now. So she's hearing this noise, and she kind of follows the noise to its origin, where we see Kirsch and Toodles, right, our other Lost Boy, and we see that they're kind of experimenting on the space hugger egg, right? And they've extracted the little alien embryo out. And we find out that what she's hearing this alien embryo, right? And this is another one of my challenges with this, right? Why is it that Wendy is the person that hears this, right? Out of everything. Now, there was some time, right, in one of the earlier episodes where, they're doing like this hearing test, and we know that she could hear different frequencies that nobody else can hear. But my whole thing is why is Wendy the only one that can hear it and none of the other Lost Boys, right? That always kind of bugged me. I didn't really understand why she was the one that was there. I guess for you, why do you think she's the only one that could hear this noise?
I don't know, and they never really explain it either.
Okay, no, hey, that's fine, right? I thought the same thing. I'm like, I don't really know. They kind of just, and then they prop her up on this pedestal, and they don't really justify why that happens. I know Wendy at one stage is like, hey, like they kind of chose me to listen to, and I'm like, no, you kind of heard them beforehand, right?
It's like eavesdropping, basically.
Yeah. In essence, yes, right? Now, I was thinking in my head, like, maybe, something that's happening is, when she had this like fight with the creature, like maybe, I don't know, something weird happened where, maybe, I don't know, something's blood melded with her or something. I don't know. I was just trying to grasp at anything to help explain why she is. But that would only make sense if she started to hear the noises afterwards. But she heard the noises before she even met a xenomorph, right? So I never really understood what that was. It was odd. But that's how episode 3 ends, right? With her, she kind of just loses consciousness when she gets to that room. And, I would say this is kind of where I start to see a little bit of slide in the quality. Now, it wasn't too egregious, right? But I think because it was such an awkward place where some of the episode is spent at the crash site, and it just feels like there's a lot of like kind of just setting up for the future. It was just kind of like a transition episode that didn't really excel at too much, but it kind of just moved the plot along to what we wanted to do. So it was kind of an awkward entry, but one where I was like, you have to sometimes do that, especially in a series like this. So it just kind of felt a little bit out of place and maybe didn't hit as many things as I was interested in. So Luke, what you think about episode 3 here?
I mean, the really big issue for me was just her hearing that sound and them never going into detail as to how she's hearing it, because you would assume she's got the same attributes as all the other Lost Boys, right?
Exactly. Yep. Especially if you're hearing, right? It's not like
Yeah.
something special. It's just like, hey, cool, you just crank up the hearing aid and you can hear shit. So
Yeah, and then as we'll explore later on, like she finds a way to communicate with the xenomorphs, which just adds more confusion to it, because then you're like, well, like are they just like adding all these attributes to her, or what exactly is the game plan here?
yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting things there. So, but yeah, that is the end of episode 3, and